John Oliver was recently speaking to Dustin Hoffman in this celebration, I guess, for the anniversary of the film Wag the Dog. And Dustin Hoffman is an individual in Hollywood who has been accused of sexual assault. In fact, according to reports, recently there was a woman by the name of Anagram Hunter, who last month said that when she was a 17-year-old intern working for a film that Dustin Hoffman was in, he had essentially sexually harassed her, and she
also said he made inappropriate comments. So she said groped her and made inappropriate comments.
Right.
She was a 17-year-old intern, as Anna pointed out. It was on the Death of a Salesman TV movie back in 1985. So
yeah. So John Oliver had to ask Dustin Hoffman about it. In fact, Oliver read a portion of Anagram Hunter's letter in regard to the harassment that she faced, and just pay close attention to Dustin Hoffman's reaction to it.
No, I get no pleasure from having this conversation, but you and I are not the victims here. That's the thing. So I read today her diary. She wrote this one line which has been rattling around my head. She said, "No one is 100% good or bad." True, right? Dustin's a pig, but I like him a lot. I mean, that is both extremely generous and damning.
Do you believe this stuff that you read?
I believe what she wrote, yes.
Why?
Because there's no point in her lying.
Well, there is a point in her not bringing this up for 40 years.
Really? Oh, Dustin.
There isn't?
Christ.
So look, this is a super tough situation. So they're doing this at the 92nd Street Y on behalf of the Tribeca Institute. And these are usually, well, let's be honest, they're usually fluffy, right? But if you're interested in movies, there'll be interesting questions about movies. But it's not a place where normally you get grilled, right? Let's put it that way, right? So some people in the audience were left uncomfortable. It was apparent that one of the organizers was very uncomfortable because he tried to step in and mediate and kind of defend Dustin Hoffman. Dustin Hoffman said he was, that he didn't bargain for this, and nobody told him that these questions were going to be asked.
Whatever. So, I mean, come on. First of all, he didn't bargain for this, and he didn't know the questions were going to be asked. You're not in the business of letting journalists know, or people in the media. Oliver doesn't even consider himself a journalist, but in an interview, you don't get to decide what the questions are. Like, I know that we've already set that tone in this country where A-listers and public figures and politicians get to, curate every portion of every interview and appearance that they do. But no, you don't get to decide what questions are asked. Oliver actually asked an important question, and I think it would have honestly reflected poorly on Oliver if he hadn't brought it up, considering the fact that he does this insanely progressive show where he talks about these issues on a regular basis.
Okay, so let me agree. So to finish my thought, look, that's part of why what's wrong with what we could loosely call access journalism. Now you might say, look, this is not a forum for journalism, it's a forum for celebrating the 20th anniversary of this movie, et cetera, but I would largely disagree. You've got a person in a position of power here. John Oliver has a format to ask him a question, and I think that it's laudatory to ask him those tough questions. So, and Dustin Hoffman complaining, I didn't agree for you to ask me tough questions in public. I don't think he understands how wrong that is, right? Like, no, it's not supposed to be that you agree ahead of time to have a journalist ask you tough questions. That's their job, but we've forgotten that. So it did seem off-putting, like whoa, this is awkward. There's like an act of journalism being committed here. And whether John Oliver calls himself one or not, he is. Now later, John Oliver challenged him and saying, look, how would I don't know that I could have lived with myself even though this is really awkward and uncomfortable, basically, if I didn't ask you these questions and you're a powerful man in this industry. And Dustin Hoffman's like, me, a powerful guy? Come on. Look, I really like Dustin Hoffman's career, but are you a powerful guy in the industry? Of course, you're so powerful that people think it's like really wrong to ask you a really important and serious question, and then you kind of intimidate them by saying, how dare you, in this context.
And also, just going back to the video for a second, think about the way that Hoffman answered Oliver's question. Well, I think there's a reason for her to lie. Okay, well, what's the reason? He doesn't state what the reason is. This is a woman who was a 17-year-old intern for a film that Hoffman was in, right? So what does she stand to gain by coming out recently about what happened to her? And also, he ended it by basically saying, well, why did it take 40 years for her to come out? Well, it's because a lot of people are afraid and intimidated by powerful individuals like you. That's the reason why they don't come out.
But look at how angry you got. And I get it, if he thinks he's wrongly accused, I get why he's angry. But you got angry and you seem to say, like, this is not the right forum to ask this question. In other words, I won't be, the implicit part there, if you don't get it, and there are negotiations ahead of time for stuff like this, is that I won't be doing this for you guys anymore. You guys blew it. You no longer will have access to me. Right? That's why you're powerful, and that's why people are afraid to come out. Certainly, all that time ago, you were even more powerful, right. And certainly she was. There was not the momentum for these stories to come out. Look, I think it is an interesting conversation about whether this is the appropriate place to have this conversation. On the other hand, if you don't have it here, where do you have it? At every turn, people will say it's an inappropriate forum to have the conversation. So I would like Dustin Hoffman and others, and I'm not prejudging him, there's a number of women, right? But he's fervent in his denial. He says, I still don't know who this woman is, I've never met her. If I met her, I was in concert with other people. So, okay, I'm giving you both sides, right? But I'd like Dustin Hoffman or whoever else to say, oh, okay, I don't want to answer it here, but here's where I will answer it from an even tougher journalist, and I'll go in front of them. They never say that part.
So by the way, I'm not buying it at all. Look, this is not to say that as soon as someone gets accused, I immediately believe them. I think that there are indicators that make it pretty obvious that there's something to hide. And I think the way that Hoffman handled the other questions also makes that apparent. Now, when these allegations came out against Hoffman, he apologized for them, right? And so he is arguing that the apology was misconstrued, in that his apology was not an admission of guilt. So I want to go to that video, but first, let's go to that video next, actually. Just listen closely to what he had to say about that.
So he said, what you should do is just apologize. But there's a key word that's left out in the quoting, as it goes around the world at a click. Right. And that is, if I did anything that was, out of sorts or I embarrassed her, I apologized. And the word if was important. Now it just says he apologizes.
Yeah, it's actually might. I mean, the intention is the same. You said, I have the utmost respect for women and feel terrible that anything I might have done could have put her in an uncomfortable situation. I'm sorry, it's not reflective of who I am.
Today. And they leave that out too.
Yeah, I know.
No, but that's a difference.
Well, it's your statement. I mean, because it's that part of it. I'm not the moral arbiter of anything. It's just it's not reflective of who I am. It's that kind of response to this stuff that pisses me off. Because it is reflective of who you were. If it happened and you've given no evidence to show that it didn't happen, then there was a period in time for a while when you were creeping around women. So it feels like a cop-out to say, well, this isn't me.
So I just thought it was interesting that Hoffman himself wanted to really, first of all, he denies that he did these things, right? And then he wants to emphasize that that's not who he is today. Well, then you just said that you didn't do anything. You don't even know these women. You have no idea who they are. Well, then why do you have to say that you've changed and it's not the person who you are today? It doesn't reflect who you are today. And then, finally, there was one other portion of the video that I wanted to quickly bring up. He also just talks about how the culture is just different now. And, I'm paraphrasing, but not by much. He said something along the lines of, you'd go into work on Monday and you'd ask everyone, or you'd ask people who they had sex with or whether they had sex on Friday, right? So basically he's trying to justify some of whatever went on by saying that, well, the culture is different now, we're just a lot more sensitive now. I just think those answers were telling.
Well, I hear you. I'm going to give two tepid defenses of Hoffman on those two issues, though. One, the culture was different, and it didn't make the culture right at the time, okay? But would people talk about sex a lot more in the workplace? Yes. Yes. Did they know that it was wrong? I think some of them maybe knew it was wrong at the time, but I bet you a lot of them didn't know it was wrong. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't make it right, and it's great that we have changed it. But the culture, I think, was definitely different. So you take that and do whatever you want with it, and if you say it's no excuse of what Dustin Hoffman did or said, okay, I understand that. And then I totally agree with you, Anna, when he says it's not reflective of who I am today. It's basically saying, okay, I kind of did those things. In fact, here, let's go to the last graphic here. There was also an accusation by Hoffman's The Graduate, obviously legendary film, co-star Catherine Ross that he had groped her on the set of the classic film. So there are a number of allegations here. But my second tepid defense of him in that regard, only in that regard, is it is possible for people to change. I know that I've changed. So in college, I was a Republican who held pro-war rallies. I was an idiot, right? And I wrote things that were totally wrong and I regret, right? So was it reflective of who I was at that time? Well, obviously I did them, right? Is it reflective of who I am today? No. So I think that's a fair argument. I wish he had stuck with that. And if he's honest and says, look, here's the things that happened. I feel terrible that I didn't understand that was wrong back then and that's not excusable, and here's how I've changed, etc. Well, then you're having an honest conversation. But I mean, finally, John Oliver, man, that guy's ballsy. Yeah. Those are, for him to say it pissed him off, for him to challenge him in public like that, you have no idea how frowned upon that is in the entertainment world.
I know.
So he took great risk doing that, and I guarantee you he now has a lot of powerful enemies and a lot of speaking engagements, etc., that he won't get. Maybe since he's incredibly successful already and has an HBO show, it allows him the ability to do that more than someone less powerful. But at least he used that power for good,
right,
and certainly tried to in his own way.
God, I love him so much. Like, I want to be you. But anyway, I do thank him for asking those questions. And the only criticism I have of Oliver is that he goes on hiatus way too often. It must be an HBO thing, but it's got to stop. Like, come on.
It's got to stop. If you like the Young Turks, you'll love Young Turks membership. TYTnetwork.com/join.